alongside 250,000 Azerbaijanians had no choice but to be expunged. That led to a mass exodus of Azerbaijanians. That the history that was in the making back then, our president very precisely in the 6th Congress of the New Azerbaijani Party, as he stated, I quote, "The Geyce precinct alongside Zengece precincts are our D lands, our historical lands, and will return back to those lands in the future," unquote. Through this very reminder, President once again sent a message across to the world community that once again there's never been a country named Armenia. And those lands that currently they live under have historically belonged to Azerbaijan and Azerbaijanians. Yesterday, we once again witnessed yet another tragedy, the genocide perpetrated by Armenians. Once again, we took a journey back to the history, the most excruciating pain, and once again we commemorated, remembered, recalled those days when Armenians did caused the pain to our people. And I believe that in the future our diplomatic corps will be further informed about those historical realities. Distinguished audience, at the very end I wish success to our event. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Dear folks, I'll have you know that we have represent students from all over 30 countries, and such as Turkey, Iran, Czech, China, and many other students from Greece, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and we have students from many countries. Also, we have our event has been joined by Mr. Firuddin Gurbanov, the official of the Ministry of Education, prominent historian Anar Iskenderli, and we're also joined by Professor Mr. Shahlar Askarov, the writer publicist Yunus Oğuz, and also we have here mass media representatives, journalists and reporters. To seize this opportunity, I would like to extend my best, my thanks for your very presence here. And without much further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to the Deputy Minister of Education, Mr. Firuddin Gurbanlı. Thank you very much. Distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen, students who are pursuing their studies here in Azerbaijan as foreign students, and all of you that I'm very grateful. Welcome once again all of you on behalf of the Ministry of Education. To begin with, I'd like to appeal to our foreign guests and students and express my acknowledgement, appreciation for accepting our cordial invitation. So they volunteered into participating at this event, for which once again I'm very appreciative. As stated early on, this event is being launched at the initiative of the Ministry of Education. This is a project per se. It's a perennial annual event, the title of which is the Novruz, the Spring Lectures. And every year we pick certain topical and pressing topics to pounce on. Why have we decided to organize and launch Novruz lectures dedicated to genocide? You know that And 2008, in January 18, with the presidential decree, Azerbaijanians, the centenarial commemoration has been put into paper by the president, which, once again, it's a grave tragedy for the entire country. Although the century has passed, exactly 100 years after the bloodshed, never will people of Azerbaijan forget those tragedies. The black chapter of the history, 1918, between March and July, in the span of the 5 months, if you will, more than 50,000 of our compatriots have certainly been subjected to ethnic cleansing, just on the sole reason, on the sole premises of their identity. Armenian occupants and mercenaries, throughout the various periods of the history, certainly taking advantage, if you will, abusing the chaos and commotion in certain periods of the history, that have certainly masterfully and dexterously made the most of those historical moments that have played into their hands. At the beginning of this century, within the empire, we're one of the satellites of the Soviet Empire, and back then, about 80, 90 years ago, Tsarist Russia's Emperor Nikolai II, and certainly abdicated his power. And the situation that in the aftermath led to the chaos and commotion and uprising and across all the country, the Russia, including the Caucasus, that the chaos was unfortunately misused and abused by Armenians by the virtue of the Bolsheviks, that they turned their power against Azerbaijani people. That tragedy, these atrocities, if you will, the rampage, was not against only Azerbaijanians. It was the brutality, the great brutality, if you will, that was leveled and inflicted against Azerbaijanians, was something, the tragedy against humanity across all the regions, including Şamaxı that we're currently at. Once again, Şamaxı happens to be one of the most magnificent lands of Azerbaijan, either with its nature and culture. You know, Azerbaijan is reputed to be replete historically. We have 9 climate landscapes out of 11 in Azerbaijan present here, and Şamaxı happens to be one of those. It's the soil and the land, the nature, climate, its people, the kind people that's known for. Well, all in all, people of Azerbaijan throughout the history have also always put out the tolerant attitude to all the ethnic minorities living in the country. When it comes to the nature and communities, have been in coexistence in such a fashion that either when sometimes you cannot pick your parents or the offspring, and sometimes you're devoid of, the option of choosing your neighbors. Sometimes you're destined to live with whatever you have, and our neighbors are quite obvious who those neighbors are, and it's no secret. And back then, you're happy when you have good neighbors. Those neighbors that, once again, they're very, they never envy the successes of your neighbors. No neighbor certainly actually puts an eye on the lands of their neighbors, but unfortunately, our neighbors have never been of goodwill, have never exercised goodwill. They have always advanced their malignant and despicable pursuits, and they've exploited us at every single opportunity. That's at the root. That is a reason that the Azerbaijani people have always historically been subjected to these various policies. And although in the beginning of the last century, the people of Azerbaijan certainly suffered dramatically across all the regions, across the country, in a matter of 3 days in the country in 1918, to be precise, from March 30th to April the 1st, 12,000 Azerbaijanians, or compatriots, had been killed. However, once again, people of Azerbaijan, with their good intents, their goodwill, with the affection, once again demonstrated the affection to the ethnic minorities, and once again we gave Armenians a chance to live together. Until the end of the 20th century, they used to live in the most wonderful, wondrous, if you will, the places of the country, including Shamakhi, and they used to live in the tallest places in the Şamaxı, and the best places, streets of Baku. They've always held very good posts and positions, and we've even respected, revered their shrine in church. And although they've caused so much pain, even at the very center of Baku, the downtown, we still have the Armenian church. But in Şamaxı, all the mosques were desecrated and decimated in the 1918, and the Cuma mosque that we saw was totally leveled. It had been set ablaze in 1980. All the mosques in Baku were also set on fire, and this once again continued at the end of the 20th century as well. Armenians did occupy Karabakh region, and still 20% of territories around the occupation, with more than 1 million refugees and IDPs expunged, and 9 mosques in the Karabakh were burned down, all the cemeteries were decimated, and our historic library facilities, more than 40 million manuscripts and books had been burnt by Armenians. According to the calculations, in Karabakh alone, we have 320 billion US dollar worth of the damage had been inflicted through the warfare, and this is the reaction. This is how we get treated, if you will. And this is something never to be forgotten. We have to do our best and endeavor to apprise the world communities on the historical realities. What we've got to do to make sure that these tragedies never happen again. I'm so lucky that at the end of the 20th century, Azerbaijan once again regained its independence, and our country began developing by leaps and bounds. And in the short span of 26 years, we strengthened and fortified the statehood, which was founded by the clairvoyant and far-sighted policy of former President Haydar Aliyev. Azerbaijan nowadays is growing once again by leaps and bounds, and it's strengthening its economy. And the very policy pursued by the incumbent president actually paves the way for the cessation and prevention of these impending attacks. And our economy, either of our economy or army, is very much very productive to stop the further aggressions. And Jojomercanlı village, the settlement, we've managed to relocate our IDPs and refugees, created all kind of conditions for them to live and work safely, safe and sound. And they live and work in different places, especially they have been embarking on the various realms of the economy, such as including the agriculture. I would never wish any country to face and encounter the same challenges. We have about 30 foreign citizens representing their own countries, and to snatch on this opportunity, I would like to wish peace and stability in your countries. Let their neighbors respect and revere their statehood, their territories, and we've always been treating other nations and ethnicities with respect and dignity. So multiculturalism has been, as a notion, has been incorporated into the white paper. And I believe that every single Azerbaijani citizen, when it comes to respect to genocide, and we should never allow these tragedies to occur again in this soil of our land. Once again, to seize this on the subject, I'm very grateful to the executive power, to Mr. Asim in person, that once again you have certainly opened the doors of this wonderful art center of Şamaxı, that we get a chance to certainly get ourselves familiarized with the certain historical pieces and impressions that we have come away with will certainly perpetuate in our memories forevermore. Never shall we forget these tragedies, and we hope these tragedies will never happen again. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to relinquish the floor to Professor, the prominent Professor, historian of Azerbaijan, Mr. Anar Skandarli. And when it comes to the March historical events, he is one of the most, if you will, informed and the guru and very well versed, for want of a better word, of the historical realities of the last century of the country. Distinguished panel, dear friends, I once again welcome all of you to the ancient land of Azerbaijan here, Şamaxı. 1918, between 20s and 1918. Atrocities, the genocide that has certainly taken a grave toll against Azerbaijani Turks, which was not the first and the last one either. Always we questioned whether what have we done to Armenians, why, and for what cause and for what reason that these tragedies and atrocities have been inflicted by Armenians towards Azerbaijanians. What is history? What does history stand for? But the very notion, if we were to challenge, a very famous Russian historian Khrushchevsky once wrote, if the accident happens, the history happens for the first time. Second time, if we've not drawn a conclusion from the first history, the tragedy is never repeated. So history, as the science, as the realm, as the discipline, certainly remembers and will never forget. And once Abbas Khanov wrote, I quote, history becomes a history only when the writer is just and fair, when his pen writes everything that has been nothing but true. But the great Einstein once quoted, the history happens to be history when it is alienated from the politics and becomes as precise as math, as unbiased as physics, and I quote. And what part of the history have we learned so far? Why have we failed to draw conclusions? In 1905 to 1907, in those our lands, when the first Armenian Muslim tragedies and atrocities took place, the first two were actually thinkers, Mehmet and Ordubadi and Nabab, wrote two books of those tragedies, and simply, and the very motto, the very crux of those books, once again, they wrote that it was simply ordinary, if you will, the domestic fights. They were not the domestic fights and struggles. They go way deeper into difficult and more challenging causes. In 1918, at 1830, I apologize, 1928, after the long struggles, in northern Azerbaijan were usurped by the Tsarist Russia. In the Şamaxı lands that we're talking with you today, the first Armenian settlement with their first exodus that actually took place the mass exodus began after the Turkmenchai in Kurdistan. And the months later, in 1828, in March 22nd, the Tsarist Russia created the Armenian settlement, and for the first time ever in their history, in the Southern Caucasus, the very first attempt had been made, and that was pursued by the Tsarist Russia. But what about the history predating the Armenian history? Let's look at the Ottoman Empire, history of Ottomans. Well, Armenians, so-called the ancient nations, had never in their lands of their own lands